Tyler from Aspire Sports, and who are some of the top waiver wire ads for week 9 of the fantasy football season? Now more than ever, it's important to add these guys to your roster to get through the bye weeks, to get through injuries. So make sure you watch the whole video. I'm going to give you streaming options at the quarterback position, streaming options at the defensive position as well. So I make new content like this every single day. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all the latest content. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So the first guys on the list, there's going to be two of them. It's going to be Adrian Peterson and Jeremy McNichols. You just had Derrick Henry out for season. So which one of these guys do you want on your fantasy football team? So I'm going to tell you that before, real quick though, I want to mention that this team could still make a move, a trade, before tomorrow's 4 o'clock. I believe it's at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time deadline is when the trade deadline is officially done. So they could still make a move. Some guys to keep your eye on going to be like Marlon Mack. I would say Tyson Williams, Ronald Jones, Mike Boone. These would be guys that could be traded before tomorrow's deadline. And if they are traded, if one of those guys is traded, I want whoever gets traded over both of these guys. So if you have one of these guys get traded, pick up that guy instead of these guys. That's what I would do. Now, if they don't trade for a running back, then for me, Adrian Peterson would be the guy that I would want, especially in your standard scoring leagues. Because what I envision Adrian Peterson being is the early down back for this team. Now, I made a video on Adrian Peterson already, and people are coming at me in the comments saying, oh, he played for Detroit last year. That's why he wasn't that good. No, he's 36 years old. I get it. One of the greatest running backs of all time. But he's 36 years old with a lot of mileage, a lot of tread off his tires, basically all the tread off of his tires. Last year, he did play for Detroit, but Detroit, their offensive line wasn't that bad. The Titans' offensive line is not that good this year. Like a lot of people think, oh, him just going there and doing what Derrick Henry, I mean, of course, not doing what Derrick Henry did, but Derrick Henry did what Derrick Henry did because he's a phenomenal talent. Okay. It's not because the offensive line is godly. It used to be really good. At this point, it's not that good. It's not as good as what it used to be. So to think that Adrian Peterson is just going to come in here and put up like, RB1, high-end RB2 numbers, it doesn't seem likely. What I envision are more of RB3 numbers, more of a touchdown-dependent RB3. Yes, he's going to be involved in this offense, especially in the early down work, but you're going to have Jeremy McNichols be involved in this offense on third down. And I think that's going to limit AP's upside a little bit because there's going to be no receiving upside there for AP. Jeremy McNichols is the better receiving back. And I also anticipate Jeremy McNichols being involved a little bit on the early down works. They're not going to load up Adrian Peterson with 20-plus touches a game. That's not going to happen. All right, so I would want Adrian Peterson because of his work around the goal line. They'll probably feed him there. But Jeremy McNichols will have a role in this offense. Specifically in PPR leagues is where I would add him. So if you don't get AP and Jeremy McNichols is still there, I would pick him up and just see how week one, well, not how week one, but this first week without Derrick Henry looks. So that's my take on it. Let me know what your take is down in the comments below. So the first two guys are going to be Adrian Peterson, Jeremy McNichols. Unless they try to trade for somebody, then that guy, if they do trade for somebody. The next guy on the list is going to be Boston Scott. And this past weekend had 2 rushing touchdowns on 12 carries. Now it's not going to be like that every single week, especially in games that this team is going to be playing from behind, which next week they play the Los Angeles Chargers, so they could be playing from behind in that game. So Kenny Gainwell will have a better week next week, but Boston Scott becomes a viable flex option every single week that Miles Sanders is out because of his rushing upside, especially around the goal line. So Boston Scott would be the next pickup. The next guy on the list is going to be Carlos Hyde. And you had James Robinson leave this game with an injury. Now it's being reported that it's more of a day-to-day injury with a foot injury, so he could play this upcoming weekend. If he does not play, for me, Carlos Hyde is a pretty solid RB2. I would say more of a lower-end RB2, but with teams on bye, he definitely is a flex option as well. So with teams on bye, he becomes a guy that you can just kind of insert in your lineup where he's going to be involved. This past weekend, he saw 8 targets, 6 catches for 40 yards. So that's pretty solid. And then this upcoming weekend against the Buffalo Bills, he's going to be involved in the passing game once again because this team should be playing from behind early and often. So Carlos Hyde is the next guy. The next guy on the list is going to be Jaret Patterson. Now, I want to put in a waiver claim for him, just somebody that you really need to be keeping your eye on. And maybe like in a deeper league, I would definitely add him if he's not already been added. But you had this past weekend, you had Jaret Patterson lead this team in rushing attempts with 11. Antonio Gibson had 8. He did have 3 catches, so they split in terms of total touches. But still, it's concerning. Antonio Gibson played on 23 of their 70 of the Washington Football's 70 total offensive snaps. Jaret Patterson played on 16. J.D. McKissic has now outsnapped Antonio Gibson 3 weeks in a row. 3 weeks in a row. Clearly, Antonio Gibson is not 100%. We know that. But you already had the fantasy doctors talk about this in the Pro Football Doc. They both said that they envision it being a real possibility that Antonio Gibson could get shut down for season. And if he does, Jaret Patterson's going to be the early down back for this team. Also see some red zone work. But that's just what I would do right now. I'll keep my eye on him. In deeper leagues, I would definitely add Jaret Patterson. And then after the bye week, I would add Jaret Patterson just to see what happens in the first game back after their bye. So Jaret Patterson is the next guy. The next guy on the list is going to be Ty Johnson. Now, Michael Carter, I've been telling everybody to trade for Michael Carter. I think this is a great time to now sell high. But still, this is a great opportunity with Mike White as the quarterback for this team because over the past 2 weeks now, Mike White is targeting the running back position at nearly 40% of the time. Nearly 40% of the time. They already said, the head coach for the Jets already said that you're going to have Mike White, who's going to be the official starter next week against the Indianapolis Colts. So Ty Johnson becomes a real viable flex play in PPR leagues. Now, if you're not in a PPR league, totally discredit what I'm saying right now. But if you're in a PPR league and you need some help, he is a viable option for you heading into this week with Mike White just peppering the running back position with targets. So the next guy, Ty Johnson. The next guy on the list is going to be DeVante Parker. Now I'm going to get into the wide receiver positions here, and he's currently only being rostered in 35% of your Yahoo leagues. That needs to be higher because he looks like he's the preferred option in this offense. Now, Jalen Waddle did have one more target than he did this past weekend, but Jalen Waddle targets are really, really short. His ADOT is very low, where DeVante Parker's are quite high, and his air yards when he is healthy is really solid as well. So DeVante Parker for me is more the wide receiver 1 in this offense than Jalen Waddle. So for that reason, his ownership should go up after this past weekend. The next guy on the list is going to be Darnell Mooney, and he looks like he's the wide receiver 1 on this team. Really unfortunate if you have Allen Robinson. I had a lot of faith for Allen Robinson heading into the season. But right now, Darnell Mooney looks like he's the wide receiver 1. Over the past 3 weeks, he has out-targeted Allen Robinson in every single game. You had Justin Fields actually look decent this past weekend after an abysmal week last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But this past weekend, he looked decent. So he's going to get better as the season progresses. He's a rookie. Hopefully, he continues to get better. And if that happens, then right now, Darnell Mooney looks like he's the wide receiver 1. So not somebody I'm super crazy about. In deeper leagues, I would definitely add him. But if you need some wide receiver help, wide receiver depth, he's somebody that I would be adding this upcoming week. The next guy on the list is going to be Tajae Sharpe. And Tajae Sharpe, now 3-2-1. The next guy on the list is going to be Tajae Sharpe. And with Calvin Ridley, I don't know if he retired or what exactly happened with Calvin Ridley, but I don't know when he's coming back. At least for the foreseeable future, he's going to be out. Maybe it's a week. Maybe it's the whole season. I don't know. But Tajae Sharpe looks like the main beneficiary from this. And the 2 games that we saw Calvin Ridley not play due to the personal issues, Tajae Sharpe has led all the wide receivers in targets and yards. So, for that reason, he would be the guy that I would want to prefer. I would prefer to target, especially in deeper leagues. Like if you're in a 10-team league, I wouldn't be adding him. And depends on the bench size for the 12-team leagues. But Tajae Sharpe is somebody that I do think there's value there a little bit, especially it has to be PPR leagues. But really, he's the only guy. I know Russell Gage, a lot of people were high on him heading into the season. He didn't do anything this past weekend. Tajae Sharpe is the guy that you want if you need some wide receiver help in deeper leagues. The next guy on the list is going to be Taysom Hill. In your 2 quarterback superflex leagues, he needs to be the top priority this week. Needs to be the top priority because you have Jameis Winston, who's officially out for season with a torn ACL. Really disappointing. I love Jameis heading into the season. So now Taysom Hill becomes the quarterback for this team. And we already know what Taysom Hill is capable of. He's not the best passer, but he can get it done with his legs, especially around the goal line. So he needs to be the top ad, and he's also a streaming option whenever this team plays due to the rushing upside with him. So Taysom Hill is the next guy. The next guy on the list is going to be Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz is just somebody who's been very consistent. putting up right around 20 points every single week. So if you need somebody, you just need somebody to score some points, he's going to be your guy this upcoming weekend against the New York Jets. So a really good matchup. Somebody who's been really consistent this year as well. Carson Wentz is the next streaming option. The next guy on the list is going to be Tua Tagovailoa. And next week he gets the Houston Texans. And I really like Tua heading into the season. And the Dolphins just have not been good at all. But at least this upcoming weekend, he gets the Houston Texans. And we saw 2 weeks ago against the Atlanta Falcons, he had 28 fantasy points in that game. So he's capable of doing that in good matchups. And this upcoming weekend, it's a really good matchup. So if you need a streaming option, he's available in your league. He's a very good one this upcoming week. The next guy on the list is going to be Justin Fields. And I do think that there's, out of all the guys that I've already talked about, Justin Fields has the biggest upside. Now, I don't want to overreact to this past weekend, but it was very encouraging with the rushing attempts, where now every single week we have seen his rushing attempts go up. So maybe this is going to be the trend going forward, that maybe it goes up a little bit more and then it stays there. And if that happens, just like we like Jalen Hurts, we like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, the rushing potential with these quarterbacks is just game-breaking. Justin Fields looked like this past weekend, he has that game-breaking potential, which we knew he had. He just really hasn't shown us yet. This past weekend, he finally showed us. So if you're in a one-quarterback league right now, and say you have like Kirk Cousins as your starting quarterback, I would just add Justin Fields to my bench right now and see if this rushing potential continues to happen. Because if it does, there's massive amount of potential there and a possible league winner down the stretch with Justin Fields. So he's the next quarterback. The next guy on the list is going to be Dan Arnold. Now, if you've watched me before, you know I've talked about Dan Arnold in the past. And this past weekend, he had 10 targets, 8 catches for 68 yards. This is a guy that was recently traded to this team. A guy that actually for the tight end position is a pretty solid athlete as well. So there is some potential on a team that's going to have to throw the ball a lot because their defense is awful. So if you need somebody at the tight end position, you're looking for a guy that can be a continuous starter every single week, he'd be the number one guy that I would pick up at the tight end position this week. The next guy on the list is going to be Pat Freiermuth. And I'm a Steelers fan. I love Pat Freiermuth, but you had Eric Ebron out in this game, and that's really going to hurt his upside. Now, if we got word that Eric Ebron was out for season or he just wasn't going to be the starter anymore, it was going to be Pat Freiermuth, then I would really like Pat Freiermuth for the rest of the season. But you're probably going to get more games where he has like 2 catches for 7 yards, something like that. But there is a lot of potential. As we saw this past weekend, he had 7 targets, 4 catches, 44 yards, and a really good touchdown catch. So if Eric Ebron plays this upcoming weekend, then I don't have a whole lot of interest. But if he does miss once again, then yes, Pat Freiermuth is a streaming option at the tight end position. The first streaming option at the defensive position for me is going to be the Miami Dolphins. They should be available in a lot of leagues right now. They're really not rostered in many leagues at all. This upcoming weekend, they get the Houston Texans. While, yes, the Miami defense hasn't looked that good, but this past weekend against Buffalo, they actually looked not bad. So for me, they're a viable streaming option with teams on bye against the Houston Texans. And the last player on the list, the last team on the list is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. They play the Philadelphia Eagles this upcoming weekend. And yes, Philly absolutely blew out Detroit, but let's not forget that Philly did not look that good prior to this week. So Los Angeles Chargers have a really good defense. This is a good matchup for them. So they are the next streaming option that is available in quite a bit of leagues right now. So the Los Angeles Chargers. And that does it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe. Thank you for watching, and have a great night.